What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Soul Hoops podcast. My name is Jeffrey. I'm joined by Ryan and Matthias again today on this beautiful evening. We're going to be talking about a divisional preview for the completely blanket Southeast Division, and we're also going to be talking about the little bit of news that has come out in the last few days. But before we get into that, Ryan, Matthias, how are you guys doing today?
Doing good. Started the semester this week at school. Going good. I like my classes. Finding my way around a new campus. This is the 10th episode of Soul Hoops.
Yeah,
We're already on double digits. That's pretty cool.
Oh,
we've got a special one today. A special guest coming in. So, yeah.
That'll be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it should be a great episode. I also started school this week, so I don't know Matthias has been there for a while, but
I'm on my third week, I think.
yeah. So we in the Midwest we start late over here. We wait till Labor
Yeah.
Day.
We do.
So yeah. How are you doing, Matthias?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm finally fully recovered from COVID. I feel good.
That's great.
Actually, got a productive day under me today.
There you go. Finally
Nice.
can get out of the room. There you go.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we can get right into the only piece of news so far this week, which was Christian Wood signing with the Lakers on a 1+1 with a player option for the veteran minimum, which was kind of expected at this point for him. This late into free agency being available, not many him wanting to play for a good team to recoup value. And it looked like the only two teams that were really offered were Miami, but I think he was waiting to see if a Dame trade went through, which it has not, and then LA. And looks like he landed on LA to get in there before training camp starts at the end of September here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about this signing. I know it was kind of a big deal on Twitter for the day, but
yeah. I think in between Miami and LA, he fits better in LA. I don't think he would have fit with the Miami Heat. His
agree.
Personality, his track record, I don't think it fits the Miami Heat culture at all.
Nope.
He would have been gone by trade deadline. So
yeah,
I think it's a good move by him to go to LA.
Yeah, I agree. Also, the defensive issues that he presents, and which has been the problem for him on every stop, I don't think would work well in the Heat scheme because with him going to LA, he's going to be playing next to a top 3 rim protector in the NBA. And although Bam is arguably the best defender in the NBA, I really don't think Bam, I think most people kind of understand this, is that Bam is not a top tier rim protector. He's a good rim protector, but he's not a top tier rim protector.
Yep.
And the scheme that operates in Miami as switch heavy as it is can leave him on islands a lot. And I think that would cause a lot of issues, especially if he's playing alongside Bam at the 4 position, because that's going to put him on smaller, quicker people. And when he's playing the 5, he doesn't have the lateral quickness or defensive IQ to be able to switch like that, which the Heat might have had different operations for him, but I can only assume under what was going on. So,
yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense over there with the Heat and the Lakers. I mean, he's from Southern California, so I imagine it's probably a dream of his to play for the Lakers. So
he did tweet that out, but every single
tweet that out.
Every single player tweets that out every single time.
They do.
And Paul George with the Clippers. This is dream play for the Clippers.
Yeah, even that's Cat, man. We know you wanted to play for the Lakers, man.
Yeah. But I really don't have. I mean, I have thoughts on the signing and what that means for LA, what it means for Christian Wood, but most of my thoughts are actually to do with the reaction to the signing, particularly the overreaction to the signing. Like, listen, can Christian Wood score? Yes. Is Christian Wood a bad player? No. But is Christian Wood like a needle mover in any sense? No. He's just not.
And it is very interesting to me because they went with the Lakers also signed Jackson Hayes this offseason to be their backup 5. And they also have Rui Hachimura on the roster, which they should start Rui. He's very good. Like, he should be starting. He fits better. Yes. And here's the thing. It's very interesting that they would choose to sign 2 backup bigs with complete opposite potential levels. Like Christian Wood's ceiling on a team is always going to be as a scoring 5, being able to spread the floor as a 4, playing alongside a more post dominant player like Anthony Davis. And Jackson Hayes is the exact opposite. He's going to be a backup 5 that can have defensive flashes for you and nothing else really. So it's like it's very interesting, and I think it also gives them a little bit of flexibility with the roles that they can throw out there. They'll have the option to be able to put out a very spread heavy offense, which they haven't been able to do the last few years. Shooting has been a problem for them, and getting a 37% 3-point shooter on 5 attempts from that can play 4 and 5, playing multiple lineups is very helpful to that team that's definitely has some shooting issues, because that adds another shooter onto the court that doesn't need to play fully on the perimeter, which has been a problem for them.
Yeah. I mean, like the Lakers do struggle with offense, right? That's been the case for a few years now. Defensively, with Anthony Davis on the court, they're always going to be really good just because his impact and his gravity as just a defensive eraser at the rim, on switches, around screens. Like he's great. He makes them a great defense. And you've got other players who are good defenders who have been on that team too. But the offensive issue, and Christian Wood is an offensive-minded player, or an offensive-only player, actually, to be more specific with that one.
Yeah.
So I think he could help out in, like, if you were to come off the bench and just play like maybe like 20 minutes a game and just score, shoot, do what he does. I think that I could see a bit of a role with LA, but where I start to be a little bit apprehensive is when the idea of him starting at the center with AD at the 4 and that being like an actual lineup for them, that's where I actually start to get like that is just never going to work. And I don't really understand the point of
because you're going to have the problem with that is the reason that the Lakers defense was good last year is because Anthony Davis bought into playing the 5 in the second half of the season, more specifically that last 2-ish months where they really went on that huge run and they kind of shot up the standings into the play-in. That's why their defense was good, because they were funneling into an elite rim protector and help side big. If they aren't able to do that, the Lakers do not have the personnel to maintain a good defense perimeter wise if they can't play as a funnel big. And if you're going to play them together, like Christian Wood needs to be out of the paint.
He does
almost all the time.
Yeah.
Almost all times. And the problem is you have
100%.
LeBron James on the court as well. LeBron is not a good defender in the year 2023. Like he knows how to play defense, but he is not playing defense. He's like 40
But you
years
also
old.
have defenders like Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah.
And
Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell.
Cam Reddish.
and Gabe Vincent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gabe Vincent can put his head down and play defense if needed. But
he's probably the best defender that we listed there. And
it's for sure. Well, except unless you count that 2021 D-Lo defensive insanity run back in 2 years ago.
he was special.
No, I do think though Christian Wood needs to be playing next to a 5. I don't think he needs to be in the Lakers system, like you said, with the funneling. I don't think he's someone you play at the 5. And I think since he's so perimeter based as a big, you can play him at the 4 and he'll be fine. And again, you just use him as a funnel to a Jackson Hayes or a Anthony Davis at the 5, because Jackson Hayes has shown defensive potential, and it's like you might as well pair the weaknesses and strengths together, because they do mesh in a way.
And it just the one thing I will say about it at the end of the day, it's another big man that can roll out if Anthony Davis were to miss time. Because if you don't have, I think you really need 2 backup bigs that can play do something on the court, because Anthony Davis has shown he's going to miss time. He's going to miss games, and sometimes it's not for long stretches. But you're going to need a 2-3 game stretch, here and there every month there, where it's like Anthony Davis has an ankle sprain, he has a hamstring issue or something like that. So, you're going to need bodies for that, and I think this can shore that up.
I also do think that he'll add a scoring punch, obviously, but if he's used off the bench like he should be, the Lakers bench really isn't anything crazy if you're looking at it. Like Gabe Vincent, Vanderbilt, Reddish, Cam Reddish himself, not Cam Reddish, Christian Wood himself, Maxwell Lewis, Torian Prince. Not a lot of scores or scores you trust. So he adds something that the Lakers actually desperately need. And you just hope that the way they stagger the minutes, they always have a game manager like Austin Reeves or D'Angelo Russell, LeBron James. I hesitate saying D'Angelo Russell because he's had some crazy moments, but
I don't know about that.
He's probably their top 3 game managers. So
I saw people on Twitter mock trading Bucks guys to the Lakers for a D'Angelo Russell trade, and I was like, I'm good on that. It's all right, man. I'm good on that.
It's just like Drew, but no defense.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm good on that, man. So I'm all good. But yeah, it should be interesting. I really just think it depends on how he's deployed, and I think this is kind of the last chance for Christian Wood to really show that he can be a rotational piece on a good team. Otherwise, he's just going to be bouncing around on bad teams with a lot of cap space, and just putting up numbers. So,
empty stats.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Because no matter what you look at his numbers and say, like, you can look at the numbers all you want. I think at the end of the day, a lot of it is like there's a lot of empty numbers there that really have not impacted the court at all. Because the numbers last year in Dallas don't look that bad, but you watch the games of him playing, it was horrible. There's a reason he was not playing.
Really bad.
Yeah.
I don't really like to use empty stats, but he's one of the few players where it's like, the impact just doesn't match up.
For sure.
Yeah. He botches so many of the little things.
Yeah.
To where like you're going to lose minutes to Dwight Powell or JaVale McGee. Yeah. And I heard a report yesterday that he wasn't even willing to negotiate with Dallas at all about a contract because he was upset at Mavs and he was upset at Jason Kidd for not being transparent about his role. But it's like, if you want to be a starting center in the NBA, you need to try on defense. Like there's a difference between being bad at defense or like below average defense for a center and then just not trying, and Christian Wood just doesn't try.
Because there is bigs and players and wings that they are not good defenders, but you can see that there's effort being put into playing defense. Like for example, Zach LaVine isn't that great of a defender, even though he has a really great body type for it. But there's times where you can see like sometimes he's actually putting effort into playing defense when needed. That just isn't there. So I don't know. It should be an interesting, timeline. I think Darvin Ham is a really good coach. So I think that he can deploy him well, and he'll be used to his strengths, because from what all I've seen with Darvin Ham is he allows players to play into their strengths and find their role. And I think that's why Lakers fans and the Lakers were so impatient last year with Darvin. They thought he was a very bad coach at the beginning of the season, but then they kept with everything that they were doing, and by the end of the year, they looked like one of the best teams in the NBA. So
hopefully Wood can buy into this shrink into a role that actually fits him, because maybe he's just outsourcing himself too much, and he's really just a 6-man guy, and he's got to accept it.
If he can buy into a Bobby Portis role, he'll be able to play.
Oh my God, yes. He's just got to buy into rebounding a little bit.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, that's all I got for that. And then one thing I did want to point out before we get on to the next, I did want to shout out. We talked about John Krasinski, the Minnesota Timberwolves beat reporter, and big market reporting. And he works for The Athletic, and he wrote an article this week about, the big market dialogue and how it's, souring small market fans and their ability to lock in with the NBA as a whole. So I'm glad that media members have started to speak out about it. And hopefully coming soon with all the new people that are coming into the sports media space, especially in basketball, hopefully we can start to get away from this and we can start, bringing in better, minds and
Ethical
dialogue.
journalism.
Yeah, better journalism. Also, First Take, new host, Mr. Richard Sherman. Ridiculous. That's the worst basketball dialogue of all time, and I'll leave it at that. So, all right. Awesome. Do we want to get into the next part then with the divisional stuff?
Let's just get into it.
The
Yeah.
divisional breakdowns.
All right, sounds good. Well, we'll be getting into divisional breakdowns then in just a sec. All right, so today we are joined by our good friend Cam here. He's going to be joining us for our first guest on the episode. How you doing today, Cam?
I'm doing great. First guest too. That's prestigious because I
got
keep
the
up
honors.
with the pod, so.
Oh yeah.
Best looking guest too. So
of course,
I'll
of
take
course.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
I have to rep the community.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Oh,
yes, sir.
yeah.
We got to plug that more. Like I leave it in
Yeah.
the link to the videos. But we got to start plugging that. I swear to God.
Yeah,
Because if it wasn't for that, the pod wouldn't exist. So
True.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No, not at all.
Yeah, definitely not. So then we're going to be getting into our previews for the divisions. So we're going to be doing the Southeast Division today with Cam. We're going to be starting off, the 6 teams in the division, or 5 teams, sorry, are Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, Miami, and then Charlotte. So we're going to be starting off with the Charlotte Hornets. So I don't know if you guys who wants to start with the Charlotte?
I can start.
All right,
Yeah. So I was just going to go through the rotation first. Their key players at like the 3 spots on the court. So for their guards, their rotation depth is looking like LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and I think Frank Ntilikina is probably going to play a little bit too, or I could see him playing. For forwards, they've got Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges is back, PJ Washington, Kelly Oubre question mark. Like we still don't really know what's going on with him. He could be back, he might not. And then Gordon Hayward is still on the team. And then bigs, they've got Kai Jones, Mark Williams, and JT Thor. And I think for their starting lineup, what I think it's going to look like right away is LaMelo Ball at point guard, Terry Rozier at shooting guard, Miles Bridges and PJ Washington at the 3 and the 4. And then I think Mark Williams is going to get that starting spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate to me.
Yeah.
I would agree. Overall, honestly, the roster for me, it honestly doesn't seem like that bad of a roster on paper. They have a lot of pieces that have shown that they can impact in different ways. A lot of good offensive punches here. Like this, I think this is going to be a fun offensive team all around. They have a pick and roll big. They have guys who can spread the floor. They have really great slashers with Miles Bridges coming back. Brandon Miller, we know he can be a high volume shooter. And LaMelo obviously is always, showtime when he's got the ball in his hands. So, I think they could be a really good offensive team. I think it's where you get to the other side of the court where they're going to have some problems in this rotation. But I don't know. I think that this roster could have some potential to be entertaining and might be a sneaky good team. But also there has to be bad teams at the end of the day. So they probably will end up somewhat at the bottom of the standings once again.
Yeah.
We have to remember a similar built team has been a playing team before, so it's like they will be competitive with LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and Miles Bridges. We've seen that core be competitive, and they're like you said, they're versatile. They got a bunch of guys that can do everything, and they're gonna play fast. That's what I'm most excited about. I think LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Terry Rozier, Miles Bridges is back. Like they're gonna be moving, and it'll be fun for sure.
Yeah, I think this is honestly. I mean, I know it's not a lot to go off of because he's only been in the league for 3 seasons, but this is the best team that they built around LaMelo so far. Like when you compare it with the team that he took to the play-in, it honestly, I mean, the starting lineup is identical except for instead of Cody Zeller, you have Mark Williams, which I think is an upgrade.
For sure.
Yeah.
They're a lot deeper at the big spot in general. So I don't think you'll see nearly as many like Miles Bridges at the 5 lineups. Even if you want to go slowly. Right. And they got killed on the boards every time they tried to do that. But now you have guys like, even if you want to go small, you could put a Kai Jones in there who's still like way more athletic than like most teams' other centers. You still have Nick Richards who's 7 feet. He gonna grab boards for you. And then like you even got a deeper wing core as well with guys like JT Thor, which I think defensively he'll be a good piece for them since that's something they lack heavily.
Yeah.
My only real gripe with their roster construction is they got mad guards that all do the same thing. Because when you have, I think he might be on a two-way, but Amari Bailey, I know for sure. Okay, he is on a two-way. Yeah. He does the same thing as Nick Smith, who was their first-round pick, who does the same thing as Terry Rozier, who's still on the roster somehow. I could see him getting moved at the deadline. But
yeah, I mean, we say that every year, though, right? Like,
yeah. And they all do similar things to James Bouknight.
Oh yeah, he is still on the roster too.
Yeah. They got a bunch of like third string guards that like do the
James
same
Bouknight. He can't even get buckets in summer league. Like,
he's done.
His run in summer league was very like up and down, and scoring wise, like that's his only value to the roster is because he's not a great playmaker, he's not a good defender. So it's like you either have to get buckets, and if you're struggling in summer league as a second or third, is it his third year?
Going into his
third year.
Going into his third year.
Going into your third year with that much NBA time, like, and G League development time, because he wasn't playing because he just wasn't good. But
and he was not to cut you off, but he was a 2-year college guy too. Like it's not like he came into the league expected to be raw. Like he was supposed to be a relatively immediate contributor too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the only problems with this roster. I could definitely see them trying to move a guy like Terry at their deadline. I think there'd be teams interested. But the problem is he does have a $20+ million contract. Contending teams are the only teams that'd be interested. And with the new cap rules, you would have to give up either a really good player or multiple good role players to get him. So it could be a problem trying to acquire him or move him at the end of the day as well. So.
Yeah,
I do think one thing that that does help with the guard problem is when it comes to Terry Rozier and Bouknight, like you said, they're not good playmakers or defenders. Nick Smith at least is intriguing defensively. I think he was very impressive in summer league, and even in college he looked good. Of course, we'll have to see if that translates. But then Amari Bailey also has like a pretty good feel for the game from what I saw in summer league and at the combine. And so they could add a better playmaking dynamic. And then of course Ntilikina too. If he's going to do nothing else on the court, he'll at least play defense. So
true.
Yeah, he brings a defensive edge because they're really lacking defense. And I think you just kind of hope one of Bailey or Nick Smith hits, I guess, and then you can move on from Rozier because they need to make some upgrades. Hayward's serviceable, and their bigs are serviceable, but you'd like to get better at like a better 2-3 and some better help at the 5, in my opinion. I don't think they got a lot of building to do, and they don't need to stick on Terry Rozier, in my opinion, for too long.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cap sheet right now. Terry Rozier still is under contract to the 2025-2026 season. So, I mean, he has time left on his contract. So I could definitely see it. One thing that is interesting, if they do want to move somebody, Gordon Hayward's this is the last year of Gordon Hayward's contract. So if they were able to move him to a team that's looking for wing depth, that could definitely be a move as well. He could be a guy that's on the move, especially with the drafting of Brandon Miller. Might want to give him more of those small forward minutes.
Yeah, it just makes sense to move him now rather than any other year. I mean, Gordon Hayward is always injured, right? Yeah. He gets injured so often that, I mean, he hasn't even been able to play that much with the Hornets, especially over the last 2 years. And yeah, they have a lot of wings on their team. They just drafted a Brandon Miller, who I think could very easily end up being in that starting rotation by the end of the year. I actually expect him to.
I think there's a good chance that he starts actually right off the bat. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, I think there's a good.
Early.
I think there's a good chance that the starting rotation ends up being LaMelo, Terry, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, and then Mark Williams.
Yeah,
and then because PJ Washington is shown to be able to be a versatile player on both ends of the court, and I think that could be really useful off the bench. He was a very good playmaker out of multiple positions last year. Very high percentile passer out of the pick and roll as the ball handler, and as like a elbow passing guy. So I could definitely see them bringing him off the bench instead of starting him.
I thought that too. I had him starting just because he just got paid, and I think they're gonna want to maybe.
Yeah, but they did just draft this guy number 2 overall. So
my thing with that though is it's not uncommon to see top picks come off the bench to start their careers. I mean, easy example is Anthony Edwards. When he first came in, he was coming off the bench behind, I think, Jarrett Culver, and I think they might have still had. No, I don't think. No, they didn't have Williams, but whoever they had at the wing at the time, he was coming off the bench to start the season.
Yeah.
And given that their core has been together for a couple of years, I think they might want to start with that core just for chemistry reasons. But I do expect him at least by the All-Star break, probably to crack that rotation, especially if, like, God forbid, any injuries, of course. But if those do happen and he takes opportunity, I could definitely see that. Or if, like y'all said, or like we said, rather, if Terry ends up getting moved, then that's an easy spot right there.
Yeah, slide in. I actually think you could look in-house and look at something similar to how LaMelo was dealt with Devontae Graham his rookie year.
That's true.
I think if Brandon Miller shows that he can contribute now, they can wait until the deadline to have him experiment off the bench with the ball in his hands, get a little more comfortable, and then when they move on from either Hayward or Rozier at the trade deadline, he can step in and fill that role.
Yeah, I think Brandon Miller is definitely a guy that could struggle playing against bigger guys with that frame until he starts to put on some weight, if he does, if he's able to. So him coming off the bench might be a positive. He might be able to play against some more bench-heavy guys, because a lot of the times guys coming off the bench are the more like score-heavy, more specific guys. You're not playing. He's not going to be going against like a big, huge wing defender off the bench all the time unless you're playing a really deep defensive team. But so yeah, I think it should be interesting. I think this rotation will change a lot. And also who's their coach? Is it James Borrego? Is that their coach?
No,
that's
Steve Clifford.
Steve Clifford. Borrego's their old coach. Steve Clifford's a guy who's very, very adamant about, like, if you are providing us winning basketball, I'm going to start you and I'm going to play you regardless of what's going on. So that's also interesting for this rotation. So I think this could be an interesting rotation right off the bat for sure.
Yeah, I do think there are some weaknesses though.
For sure.
My big question mark with drafting Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball is the rim pressure.
Yeah.
Other than the rolling threat on a pick and roll, there's not going to be a lot of rim pressure for this team at all. And I guess you have Miles Bridges coming back who had some cutting chops, but still, they're not going to get to the rim a lot. And it's just, I don't know. You got to make the game easy. If you're not getting to the rim, you're not going to win. It's simple.
Yeah.
That is one area I could see their abundance of guards coming into play and helping, because they are all athletic as hell. Even at the wing, you still have Bryce McGowan, who's pretty good at getting to the rack. JT Thor, who's mad athletic. Even though he'll have a more off-ball role. I mean, both of them will have a more off-ball role. But just as cutters, I think they can help open up the offense a little bit more. And like you said, you still have Miles Bridges, who, assuming he comes back to form, that's a 20-point-per-game guy who does most of his work in the paint and from the three. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, then we can get into the range that we could see them finishing. For me, I think the absolute ceiling for this team would be like a 9th seed, and I could see them finishing anywhere between 9 and like 12. Honestly, I don't think they'll be bottom, but I think they could make the play-in, but I don't really project them to. So,
yeah, that was kind of my range too. I had them anywhere from 8 to 12. If I had to predict one seed they'd finish up, it would be probably 12. I just think that yes, this pieces of this core have made the play-in in the past, right? But I think with the new guys you bring in, like Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, Kai Jones, these guys who don't have a ton of experience, and then you're reincorporating Miles Bridges with the roster, I don't think this is a play-in year for them. I'd probably say they finished around 12th.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cam. No, go ahead, Cam.
Okay. Yeah, my range is a little bit more varied. I got them finishing anywhere from 9 to 15.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think they will finish 13, 14, 15, but because they're so like LaMelo does so much for the team that I'm a little concerned just because his durability, it's not terrible, but he did only play about 30 games last year. The year before he played 70 something, but the year before that, his rookie season, he only played around 50. So it really rides on the back of him. If he stays healthy, I think they finish around 11th. That's like my final prediction. But assuming, like, of course, nobody wants it to happen. But if something were to happen, I could definitely see them falling all the way down the standings.
Yeah,
I think they'll just miss out on the plan.
Yeah, I could definitely. There's definitely a world where injuries start to rack up for some of the rotational guys, and you start to drop significantly, which is what happened this year. Just injury after injury after injury. So
yeah, I have them finishing 9 to 15 as well. I think the only reason they weren't the 15 seed this year was a Kate Cunningham injury, and it really just depends. Like looking at the East, honestly, the 9 seed through the 15 seed, Toronto, Chicago, Indiana, Washington, Orlando, Charlotte, Detroit, it's not great. So it's like a lot of those guys have some young talent that can either stagnate or it can improve. So I could see them finishing anywhere in there.
Yeah,
for sure. All right, well, with that, then we can wrap up. We can get into the next team, which is going to be the Washington Wizards. Last year, they finished number 12 in the East with a record of 35-47. Traded away their two best players in Kristaps Porzingis and Bradley Beal this offseason, finally, blowing it up after getting a whole new front office. So I don't know if you want to give us the projected rotation again, Ryan, to start it off.
Yeah. So for their guards, I've got Jordan Poole, Tyus Jones, DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet. Forwards, I've got Corey Kispert, Kyle Kuzma, Bilal Coulibaly, Denny Avdija, Danilo Gallinari, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. And then bigs, they've really only got Daniel Gafford and Mike Muscala. So, and for their starting rotation, I think it's likely that they start Poole and Tyus together at the 1 and 2, wherever you want to put them. Probably Tyus at the 1. And then for forwards, I think Corey Kispert is probably going to start for them at the 3, just because he started a lot of games last year. He provides shooting. And I think a lot of their other wings, like small forwards, I don't think are really ready to start yet. And then bigs, Daniel Gafford is the only real option they have to start at the 5. Oh, and Kyle Kuzma at the 4.
Yeah, Kuzma's going to start at the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I would probably have the same rotation. I think it's possible that Denny might start some games, but depending on how they want to go in the development route with Denny as well as Bilal. But Bilal is super, super raw. So I could definitely see him fitting more off the bench, being able to, kind of handle the ball a little bit. And being out there with more shooting. Because I think the starting lineup could definitely have some shooting issues.
Unless Bilal kind of comes in and has a Herb Jones-esque defensive rookie year at the wing position, I don't think he's going to start many games other than injury replacement for the Wizards.
Yeah, I think honestly, I would expect Denny to start just because I feel like he's more valuable to the development of that franchise. He was the higher draft pick. And he's shown a lot of progression. I know he started, I think, the last 15, maybe 20 games of last season. And he showed a lot of progression as far as defense. And the main thing for me was the playmaking, which I think with the only real playmaker on the roster being Tyus Jones, you could use a lot of that. I think they'll roll him out at the 3, and then he'll kind of run like a pseudo point forward type role, which that will really play to Jordan Poole's strengths, in my opinion, as being able to move off ball and as a ball handler, but not as a primary playmaker. Like you said, but I don't think Bilal will get that much starting minutes unless he gets opportunity via injury or his defense is just crazy.
Yeah.
This is one of the teams I want to talk about. They have a lot of guys entering restricted free agency or unrestricted free agency next year. They got Gallinari, Wright, and Tyus Jones entering unrestricted free agency, and Denny is entering restricted free agency. I expect them to keep Denny, so I'm not too worried about them moving on. But the Wizards are in position. Tyus is making 14. DeLon Wright's making about 8, and Danilo's making 7. Those are tradable contracts. especially like they're not going to bring in anything big, but they're not. That's not the goal.
Yeah.
I expect one of those, or maybe two of those guys to get traded. I think the Wizards are going to make more moves towards this rebuild.
Yeah, they need more picks for sure. I mean, the trade Bradley Beal having a no trade clause completely messed up the value of picks they'd be getting for him, right? So I think as they enter these first steps into their rebuild, I think you're right, Matthias. They've got a lot of expiring deals and tradable guys that I could totally see them flipping at the deadline for some first round picks just to get things back and maybe accelerate things a little bit. But overall, this season for the Wizards, they have zero expectations, and there's really nothing like other than just seeing what they have to work with and hoping for development from some of their younger guys. That's like this team doesn't have a ton to necessarily play for, right? So I think that even things like their rotation or the starting lineup could change a lot. I expect it to change a lot based on how people are playing, based on which players they want to give more opportunity to show things in their game.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that, if given opportunity, could be breakout candidates throughout the year. There's going to be a lot of guys on this roster that are going to have really good stretches that haven't had the opportunity. Johnny Davis is going to get run this year. He didn't get a lot of run last year. He was in the G League a lot of the year, and he was bad when he was in the playing up in the NBA. A guy like Patrick Baldwin Jr. coming over from the Warriors in that trade, really good shooter, really great moving off the ball. That's a guy that could definitely have a really good stretch of games where he starts lighting it up from three, especially if he's given run. So I think this roster and this future of this team, they have a lot of pieces that have some good, run that could really develop for them. And like you said, I think the lineups are going to change a lot. I'm really looking forward to watching like this team when there's not many other good games on, because they are just going to do fun stuff. I mean, Jordan Poole, fun player, love him or hate him. He's got his ups and downs, fun player to watch. Same thing. Like what I've talked about before with the power forward rankings, Kyle Kuzma, one of my favorite guys to watch, super versatile, offensive big, can do a lot of fun stuff. And if he's given offensive freedom, we'll be seeing him score a lot more like we have, when he was starting his career off in LA. So.
Yeah, one thing I really like about the team is the cohesiveness of their roster. Because even though they suck, right? But all of their pieces really fit together when you look at it. Because you have guys like Bilal who can play really 1 through 3, maybe even some 4 if he's really grown to 6'8". Danny who can do the same. Guys like Kisper who's going to space the floor. I really like that you mentioned Patrick Baldwin Jr. because I think if they utilize him the right way, he could be one of the bigger pieces for their future. People forget that he was one of the and he has, I think he's 6'10", so that's like
they need
big. The size that he provides, and I think a lot of people forget that he was one of the top recruits when he was coming out of high school.
He was.
Which doesn't mean as much because we've seen plenty of busts, but even when he last season with the Warriors, he showed a couple of times like that talent, like he was able to come in and be a spark plug. And I think if they utilize him right, give him opportunity. Same with Ryan Rollins, who also showed a lot of promise, especially in the G League. I think if they give them the right opportunity, they can have a really fun roster where, like y'all said, they mix and match lineups every game based on matchup, and it's just a different look every game. But like, I like how everybody, like all the pieces fit together.
Yeah. Really quick about Patrick Baldwin. He would have been a much higher pick if he went to a real college. He went to UW Milwaukee, which is a very small local state school here in Wisconsin, because his dad was the coach and it was pretty much hometown team. And then his dad got fired in the middle of the season. And then he got hurt. So he dropped down down draft boards. If he would have went to one of the high up colleges that he could have went to, I think you would have definitely seen him drafted higher because he's like the perfect archetype for the modern NBA.
For sure. I think he's an intriguing player.
Better.
Yeah.
100%.
He's also
he reminds me. Oh, yeah, you go.
Yeah, he's also got like the nicest looking jump shot in the entire NBA. So
Yeah.
he's a fun watch for that reason alone, if anything else.
He reminds me a lot of MPJ.
Yeah, I was about to
know
say
it's
that. I
kinda
feel like he's
easy
like
to
a
say
kind of
'cause
like a
6'10"
poor man's
catch and shoot.
MPJ.
Yeah, but he does have a lot of the things that MPJ offers. I think if they really focus on his defense too, that could give him an edge too, as far as development.
For sure.
Yeah. With the Wizards though, I feel like they'll go through. They're going to be a hot and cold team. We'll see them go on winning streaks, and we'll see them go on losing streaks, because they have just like we've said, they have intriguing pieces. Their guard play super diverse.
Yeah.
Jordan Poole, Wright, and Tyus Jones, completely different players.
It's like the opposite of the Hornets.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I'm just kind of curious what they could get really into the schemes that they pull out, and they could be a sneaky team. Like, I see them not being good but competing every night. Where like they have this stat where they only won 27 games, but they were in 48 like single digit close games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and that's all you can really ask for from young teams too. Like,
oh, 100%.
Obviously they're trying to lose, right? But if you can be competitive in the games and then like put up a fight against the good teams, like the games you want to win, like what else do you really want them to do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me, I think this team is more. I pretty much think that their ceiling is like what they were last year. I think this is like a 12 to 15 seed team.
Yeah.
A lot of variability there, but definitely some good pieces that, like, this is definitely a league pass watch team. Like, you know, if they're playing a good team, or if it's another, you know, they're playing another young team that also has some intriguing pieces, it might be a good game to turn on to watch them kind of go at each other, because they're going to be playing super free. One thing I wish they would have done, I wish they would have fired their coach this offseason in Wes Unseld Jr. I don't think he's that great of a coach. I think if they would have went hard reset all over the roster, I think including the coaching, it could have, and hired, you know, an up-and-coming coach that has some new ideas and might be able to develop along with them. I think that would have been also another thing. That's one thing I didn't really like about their offseason. But other than that,
isn't Wes Unseld? He's only was coaching them for a year or two, right?
2 years, I think.
He's a pretty young coach.
But I think there's been clear indication that he's not that great of a coach so far.
I think they're kind of in the position that the Rockets were, where even though Steven Silas was a new coach, he was brought in to mesh with Harden specifically, and when they had Westbrook and Wall. And Unseld, of course, he came in when they had Beal and Porzingis still. So I think even though they might have hired him with the possibility in mind that they could go down or rebuild, he's also just not that good. I guess another comparison you can make would be like the Hawks when they had Lloyd Pierce. Even though he's new, he just doesn't really mesh well with the roster. Of course, he could maybe just like flip the narrative entirely this season. Yeah, but I don't really see it happening. But I could also one thing about this team, I wouldn't be surprised if they start off like, y'all know how every year there's always that one team that starts off like one of the top like 6 seeds, and then we're all like, ooh, we didn't expect this team to be good. And then they just
you raised your hands. I saw that.
Blazers are great at that.
Blazers are great at that.
The Pistons always start off like 7-0. There was a season they start off like 10-0, and then they lost like 25 games.
Magic too. The Magic are amazing at that. And I definitely think, especially like if Poole comes out with something to prove, and you know the narratives around him this season, like that could definitely we could see some overreactions that way.
I see Poole coming out hot this year. I think he's going to come out in the first couple months of the season and be really, really good, and then I think he'll cool down.
He's going to put up, no matter what efficiency those numbers are at, he's going to be putting up like 25 a game.
I want to see the Poole revenge too.
Yeah, empty the clip. You're not on a good team.
Yeah. In terms of seeding, though, I'm similar. I see him, honestly, like 12, 13 to 15.
Yeah.
They're going to be bottom here.
Same. I actually think they're going to place 15th, not because like one team has to be last, and I think compared to everybody else in the East, I think it's just going to be them.
I agree. Yeah, I have them finishing 15th.
Yeah, I think that's mostly what it could come down to. But I think there's some teams, like we've said with the Hornets, there could be some teams that a lot of their guys get injured again and they could drop down the standings really fast. But I would assume that this will probably be the worst team in the East. But I don't think it's going to be a worse than the team in the East like we have had the last few years, where it was the Pistons and it was just like, don't turn on Pistons basketball. Like, it's just not worth turning on. I think this team is not going to be like that. But I could definitely see in December when some contracts become eligible to trade, you definitely see them moving some guys. DeLon Wright is a guy that contending teams are going to be looking at to bring in. Same thing with Tyus Jones. They could move him, even though they just brought him in to give him a starting opportunity. Definitely some teams that could take him, trade him as well.
I could
even
see
Gallinari.
Yeah.
Oh, Gallinari. I think Gallinari could be on the move for sure. But yeah, I think it'll be somewhere. If they're competitive around the trade deadline, they're going to sell.
Yeah.
They don't want to be competitive. If they're like 11, 10 seed around the trade deadline, they're going to want to drop.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't make sense to try to compete at their timeline. I do think, though, teams like Detroit and Charlotte are also going to be pretty bad. So I think that'll be like the bottom race for the bottom East.
Makes sense.
Any Wizards fan should be heavily invested in watching G League Ignite games this year.
Yeah.
Somebody on that roster is probably going to be on your roster next year.
Yeah. This is not a great I'm not a big draft guy that from years out, I start to follow it like, early spring where I can start kind of looking at prospects and stuff. But from what I've heard, that this is not the greatest draft class overall. No. So it's not a great year to be really bad, but honestly, for a team like this, there's actually certain years where certain teams, it's actually good for them to be really bad because they have a lot of pieces that they can build around. So they don't need the bona fide superstar guy right off the bat. They have they have guys that can develop.
And this is a good draft for that because it's not like 2013 bad. It's just kind of meh. Like, I guess a good comp maybe be like 2015. Like, a lot of the top players probably won't be. There's a couple that could be like the number one options on their teams, but they're probably going to be like complimentary twos. But you got interesting guys like a Booz Ellis, who I'm sure y'all have heard of.
Yeah.
He's very intriguing. Ron Holland as well. Even Isaiah Collier, who isn't at G League, but he's in college. Like, he would be a good league guard piece for whoever team can fall and get him. So.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well then we can move on to the next team, which for me would be the Orlando Magic. This is going to be a very interesting team to watch throughout the season. They had a huge stretch of games. Second half of the year, they were a 500 team. But they still finished 34-48 because they were so bad at the beginning of the year. But they have a lot of really good pieces. So for me, I don't know if you want to do the rotation again. This is a very interesting team with rotation wise, honestly.
Yeah, I really love this team. So for guards, they've got Markelle Fultz, Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, and Gary Harris. Forwards, Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jonathan Isaac, Jet Howard. And for bigs, Wendell Carter Jr., Mo Wagner, and Goga Badatse.
And Joe Ingles.
Ingles.
I forgot to put him in there. Joe Ingles. Yep. And then for their starting lineup, I think it's going to be Markelle Fultz at 1, Jalen Suggs at 2, Paulo and Franz at the 4 and 3, and then Wendell at 5.
Yeah. I really think that second guard spot is really up for grabs between Anthony Black and Jalen Suggs. I think it's going to be a camp battle type thing.
Honestly, I think Black is the one guard that I wouldn't count on making it just because of his lack of a jump shot, unless it improves a lot, which I've heard rumblings that he's tweaking it, and it honestly doesn't look terrible.
It looks pretty good, I was about to say. Like, it's not like
weird.
Yeah, but I think they need as much shooting as they can get. And I know Suggs isn't a great shooter, but his form is good, and I honestly think that's like something that'll improve a lot.
He scales to be a better shooter for sure.
And also
same with Cole Anthony.
Also, Suggs' defense, I think, kind of fits what that starting lineup wants to do a little bit more. Actually, a lot more than like a Cole Anthony. So, that's why I kind of think he's going to be at the 2, and then Markelle Fultz has been the 1 for a few years now. So I think he'll remain there.
Anthony Black, though, it does have a chance to just get that starting spot off of his defense, because a big part of his scouting report is that he's one of the better guard defenders in the draft.
Yeah.
And, like,
We'll
Suggs
see.
has shown that he can defend, but like he still hasn't shown he's like necessarily a real solid defender.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I would say I'm pretty high on Suggs generally. So I would like him to see that get him that starting spot, but I also think he just will, based on the defense, because it's not like amazing, but I think it's pretty good for where he's at in his career.
Yeah.
With Anthony Black though, I don't think he's gonna. I think he might not even make the rotation right away, just because this Magic team actually this Magic team wants to win. They've said that. I don't think they want to lose anymore, and I don't know how ready Anthony Black will be to just contribute right away. Gary Harris, I thought, had a super underrated year last year. I think he's going to play for sure.
Yeah, they need the shooting.
They need the shooting, and even other forwards on their team, I still think would get minutes over Anthony Black right away. I think that maybe he has a really good training camp, and then he can kind of sneak into that backup point guard or backup 2-guard spot before the season starts, or maybe halfway through he's just playing really good and he can get that nod. But yeah, right away, I don't think he's going to be that much of a contributor within the rotation.
Yeah. See, I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Cam.
I was just going to say, one thing I do like about Black, though, is the fact that he's 6'7", and because of how good his defense is, even if he doesn't necessarily start at the guard spot right away, or not start, but like get in the rotation at the guard spot right away, I could still see him getting in minutes at the wing.
Yeah.
Just because of his versatility on that end. Because I do think Cole Anthony is their definitive 6-man. You want to give Gary Harris minutes because he's probably your best shooter. And even Jet Howard, you same reason. I mean, he's there just so he can space the floor. And
they took him very high when he wasn't projected to be the 11th. They took him at 11, wasn't projected to be that high, projected as a late teens guy, mid to late teens guy, even might fall into the 20s. They took him at 11 solely because of his ceiling as a movement shooter. So I really think that he's going to play because they need this season is predicated on them developing shooting talent.
Yeah.
100%.
But I think just to finish up, I think it's really down to Okeke, Isaac, and Black and Jet Howard for those that last wing spot.
Yeah.
Just because, and I think that gives the rookies a good chance to make it, just because of how injury prone Okeke and Isaac have been, and how inconsistent Okeke has been too, because he dropped off a lot after his rookie year. So
yeah,
we don't even know if Isaac will play. Like, he's barely played basketball in the last 3 years, so that'll be a big thing. I just think when looking at Orlando's weaknesses, they were bad offensively.
They were,
but
sure.
They were one of the worst playmaking teams in the league. Ball movement was bad. Assist numbers were low. And some of that is due to the fact they don't have shooters. They don't have play-enders. They were bottom 9 in field goal percentage. So maybe having improved play-enders will improve their assist numbers. But someone like Anthony Black that will get them in transition and has playmaking chops at the guard position, I think actually fits that lead bench role for them, and I think he'll carve out some minutes and maybe even take over Cole Anthony's primary spot on that bench, because they don't have a lead playmaker, honestly, in this roster at all. Like, Paulo, Friends, and Markelle can play make, and I'd say Markel's probably their best, but Anthony Black has a chance to come in and actually show, like, hey, I can move the ball and set up this offense, which they need. They don't have that.
I can see that. I think Markelle definitely, like you said, Markelle, Franz, and Paolo, but more specifically, Markelle and Paolo, I think they have the capabilities to be the lead playmakers. With Markelle, obviously, is just help. But I think once he came back into the lineup last year, you saw, like, or at least me personally, I saw a big change in how the roster played as a whole. They looked a lot more cohesive, and I think it comes from having that experience. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to say experience because he hasn't played that many games, but at least age-wise, like he's definitely one of the more like experienced guards on that roster. And then Paolo, obviously, like, his playmaking at the forward spot is very impressive.
Yeah.
But I do think that Black could shine through in that role as well. But even still, you got guys like Cole Anthony, who isn't necessarily a natural point guard, but as an on-court leader, I think he could definitely still keep his minutes on that end. And then Suggs, also one of the things he came in for came in known for it was his ability to be the quarterback of the offense. So it's definitely still tough, but I see what you mean there with Black people.
I think honestly all of them could play, because looking at their big and forward depth, there's a good chance Anthony Black is their backup kind of forward piece, and he might just be splitting backup forward minutes with like Howard and like their bench big is Mo Wagner.
Yeah,
like that's it. Like they're not competing with a lot of bench depth.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of bench depth around the wing, right? Joe Ingles, I think he's gonna play.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they need shooting so bad. Where, I mean, Joe Ingles, his shot has not looked that good in FIBA for Team Australia. So, I mean, we'll see what that ends up looking like when he gets in for the team. But yeah, I don't know. They've got some lineup issues to figure out for sure. But my strength to this team is got to be their size. Size everywhere. They've got a great mixture of size with skill. Like all their players that are big also have great skill. And all around defensively, this team is going to be a great defense next year, just like they were for a large stretch of last year. Last year, they started out the season 5-20, and then after that, they were 500 the rest of the way. Yeah. So, and that was all because of their defense. So, I'm sure the defense will carry over. We talked about Paulo a ton last episode and how Paulo at the 5 could be like a legit option for them. And how even Paulo at the 1 could be an option for them. I think he's going to play everywhere.
Paulo's so sick.
Yeah.
I think the FIBA reps have helped bro a lot, especially with Kurt playing him at the 5. Like his defense was probably the only real question mark coming into the draft, because I mean you don't really need him to be a great 3-point shooter, but over time, like I think especially after FIBA, like his defense is going to see a big jump this season.
Yeah.
No, and I think that'll be big because they don't have they have a lot of size in the wings, but in terms of like true centers and bigs, they don't have rim deterrent. And that's, if Paulo can show to be a good, like a decent rim deterrent at the small ball 5, that'll be huge. Because you don't want to rely on Wendell as your number 1 anchor. Like he can defend, but
he's more of definitely like an Al Horford type of big.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to mention while we're on the Magic is I got it originally shot from the community in a YouTube video of his, which his YouTube is the Drop Step. I gotta give him his credit. But he highlighted that they had a 6-game, I believe, win streak at one point in the season where they beat the Hawks, the Clippers, the Celtics twice, and the Raptors. And I might be missing a game, or maybe it was a 5-game win streak. But during that game, during that streak, they showed a lot of qualities of younger playoff teams. Like they were fighting in those games. The defense was suffocating. I think in the game against the Clippers, they held PG and Kawhi to 25 combined points.
Wow.
Or something along those lines. It was definitely under 30. And they just have a lot of grit, which you don't really see in a lot of young teams, but in a lot of young successful teams, they tend to have that quality. And I like that about them.
And I think a lot of that too is a testament to their coach, Jamal Mosley. I think Jamal Mosley's done a really good job at building a culture there and a team that players want to play for. From what I can tell, that organization is pretty sound as far as management and as far as coaching. I think they've got a really good thing brewing over there in Orlando. And I can also see them being maybe like a surprise playoff team or play-in team, most likely. My range for this squad, personally, I could see them finishing anywhere from the 7th seed to the 11th. So from being from hosting a play-in game to make the playoffs, or maybe just miss out on the play-in entirely. I don't think this team has a ton of expectations. They're trying to win and they're trying to make the play-in if they can, make the playoffs if they can, especially. But I think this team can still have a range where they can fall. And if you told me that the Raptors and the Bulls and some of the older teams did end up finishing better than them, it wouldn't surprise me too much. But I think you're right, Cam. This team has the makings of like a young, gritty playoff team that I could see making some noise in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I agree. I have them as somewhere between the 7th and the 11th seed as well. I think they'll be right in the mix the whole season. And I think there's there's a higher chance that they make the play-in than miss it. They were very good down the stretch. Like I said last season, over 500 team, or about, I think it was like exactly 500 team going down the stretch from All-Star break to or like December to the end of the season. But I could definitely see if the guys like a Franz and like a Apollo take the steps that we think that they can take, this team could be a very dangerous team throughout the year, and definitely will give good teams trouble. They swept the Celtics last year in their series 3-0. And this team is going to be hell for smaller teams. Like teams with a lot of smaller players at different positions are going to be in hell trying to guard them. I mean, like Franz is like 6'7", 6'8". Paulo's 6'10". Sorry,
they're both 6'10". I'm pretty
Franz
sure.
is 6'10".
He's like huge. He's huge.
Yeah. So they got two 6'10" guys starting at 3 and 4. Their 2 guard is going to be either Jalen Suggs, who's a bigger point guard, or Anthony Black, who's 6'7". Markel's a bigger guard. Like Wendell's a little bit smaller of a 5, but like even then he's like a traditional 5 size. Like he's not undersized. No. So like, and every single player on the 1 through 5 can switch. Like it's going to be a really good defensive team. And I think if they can develop their offense a little bit, the 3-point shooting, because 3-point shooting is one of the most variable things in the NBA for teams that aren't like high end shooting teams.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see there being their 3-point push percentage being so much higher than it was last year overall. So yeah. Do we have anything else about Orlando? Otherwise we can move on to the next team.
In terms of my seeding prediction, I have them a little lower. I have them more of a 9 to 13 range. I think with all young teams, there's a big risk of just becoming stagnant. Like development isn't very linear, and I don't want to jump too high on them. And I think looking at teams like Atlanta, I don't see them pushing over Atlanta, and I could maybe see a Brooklyn Nets, like if Brooklyn Nets fall into seeding, so maybe like an 8. But I still think they have big enough holes in their roster that they will go on losing streaks. They're young, so they will. They're going to have an up and down season. I think they'll be a little more consistent, but I think they'll be a playing team.
I got them in the 8 to 12 range, and that's okay. But for similar reasons, I'm just a little bit more cautious because we tend to do this with young teams. Like the Pistons, a lot of people did it with last year, expecting to take for Cade to take an all-star like leap, and then just an improved young core around them. Cade went out, and we seen what happened. But even if Cade was healthy, I doubt they would have made the play-in.
Yeah,
that's a lot of the same thing with this team, because you have a guy like Paolo who's so good, and he definitely could make the leap to an all-star caliber player. And then, of course, a guy like Franz, who honestly is similar to Bojan Bogdanovic up in Detroit. But I definitely think we could be like a year too early on the play-in predictions, although I do have them finishing around like 10th. So, like, I'm definitely rooting for them to make it because I want to see them succeed. But I am a little bit more cautious just because, like, it might just be like 1 or 2 years too early. But I think if not this year, then next year for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. So then we can get into the next team, which is going to be the Atlanta Hawks, which Cam is actually a Atlanta native, Hawks fan, diehard. So we'll get into the Hawks then. So this team finished 8th last year and then won their play-in game against the Miami to move up to the 7th seed in the playoffs. But we can do their rotation again, Ryan, if you want to knock that out.
Yeah. So for guards on this team, they've got Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Kobe Buffkin, Patty Mills. For forwards, I've got AJ Griffin, DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson, Sadiq Bey, and then bigs, Clint Capella, Onyeka Okongwu. I predict their starting 5 is going to look somewhat like Trae Young at 1, DeJounte Murray at the 2, DeAndre Hunter at the 3. I went with Jalen Johnson at the 4, and then Clint Capella at the 5.
Yeah, it'll be one of Johnson or Bay. I'm not entirely sure which direction Snyder will want to go in, but it really just depends because one's going to give you defense and the other one's going to give you spacing. So it's kind of just what you value more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jalen Johnson has I would like Jalen Johnson off the bench. I think with the ability for him to handle the ball a little bit as a point forward and play make, could offer some benefits to bringing him off the bench if he can't run with a Trae Young or a DeJounte Murray, which it would be unlikely that both of them would be off the court when he comes in as off the bench. But if needed, he can definitely provide some playmaking chops. Yeah, I would agree. I think there's I just think Saddiq Bey, from what he showed in the playoffs last year and went down the stretch once he got to Atlanta, I think shows that he'll probably be the starter just because he provides a little bit more shooting, which is big for a Trae Young team, being able to sit in the corner and move around and run around on the wing as well. And he also he has a little bit of cutting in him. So I think it would be a pretty good chance that he's the one that's starting at the 4 spot.
Yeah, I think I think it'll be kind of similarly built to the Jazz teams that Quinn Snyder coached, where it was kind of just like, obviously you got your 2-man guards, and then the forwards are kind of like on the like more average end, because I know he used to run a lot of like Ingles and Bogdanovich at the 4, which I think will be similar to us running Hunter and Bay at the 3 and 4, just because we have Capella, who obviously he's not Gobert, but he's gonna give you like damn near 15 rebounds a game, and he's a good anchor, which Okongwu is as well, but he's obviously on the smaller side at like 6'8". And so because of that, I would prefer to run Jalen Johnson at the 4 off the bench, just because he's he's kind of average for a power forward, but he's definitely probably the most athletic wing we have on the team. And he can match up with a variety of positions. So I think we'll throw him out there more a lot with Okongwu when we want to switch, and he'll help us definitely defensively, especially next to Okongwu, because both of them are really good defenders and can switch to multiple positions. So, and then on top of that, our guard play off the bench is Bogdanovich, Kobe Buffkin, and AJ Griffin, which Kobe might not see that many minutes, but regardless, and none of them are good defenders. Kobe is kind of intriguing because he could be, but I think because he's a rookie and he's kind of slight, he might struggle on that end. And Bogdan and AJ aren't good defenders at all at this point. So,
yeah, I do like AJ Griffin's game though. I think, as all of us, I'm really high on Jalen Johnson. Hawks had a really, really good offense last year, so that it's kind of weird saying that they had a weakness in it, as they were 7th in the league, even though they weren't they were a solid team. But they were middle of the pack, 18th in the league in assist numbers, and again, middle of the pack in a lot of the ball movement numbers. So replacing a John Collins with a Jalen Johnson and maybe just trying to get a little more offensive diversity excites me, because I know Trae Young's so good with the ball in his hands, but they need a counter, because the high pick and roll, I've had to deal with it watching Damian Lillard. High pick and roll is the easiest thing to defend in terms of just blitz the ball handler and get it out of his hands.
Yeah.
And they had Murray last year, but again, you need a tertiary playmaker, and hopefully Johnson can make the leap and kind of be that relief guy.
Yeah, especially with the high pick and roll, they don't have bigs that can really kill you in multiple ways. Both of their bigs are both roll bigs with not much outside game. They're not going to be able to work off the mid range at all. Neither of those guys are doing that. So, but that's where I'm most excited about this team next year with Quinn Snyder coming in, because he's a guy that's shown, at least offensively, that he is willing to do variable things. He did a lot of variable things in Utah using Donovan Mitchell as moving around when he had another playmaker like Joe Ingles. So I think you could definitely see a lot more movement shooting and really getting DeJounte Murray and Trae Young to buy into moving off ball when the other one doesn't have the ball is really the number one thing for this team to be better. Like it was pretty much it was the biggest weakness on offense. A lot of stagnant staring at each other when the other person had the ball. And having two playmakers at like Trae Young is like pretty much like second to Jokic as a one-man offensive engine, honestly, from being able to score at all three levels and the playmaking levels. Like it's honestly like really it's like generational type offensive stuff. But him just standing and staring at DeJounte Murray when DeJounte has the ball, like it just does nothing because then the guard defender can just stand there. You're not putting any pressure on the defense as a shooter. And he's such a talented shooter that he should be doing more of that. So,
and I think that is definitely one thing that'll be a focal point because I know even though Nate McMillan said it going into last year and it didn't really happen, Quinn Snyder, as soon as he got here, one of the first things he was talking about was being able to get Trae involved more when he doesn't have the ball. And not even just off ball, but like defensively too. And I saw, just as a Hawks game watcher, like I saw an improvement in at least his effort. It definitely looked like he wanted to try more. And so I think him buying into the offense, DeJounte, I got full faith that he's going to buy into it because he's just a good locker room guy like that. And Quinn being an accomplished and well-respected coach around the league, especially because he used to coach Donovan Mitchell, and I know Trae and Donovan Mitchell are boys. They was just at runs like the other week. So, like, I think that'll definitely help as far as the team buying in. And then just the shooting in general. Last year, despite what it made, like, the roster made look like, we were a bad three-point shooting team. Like, we were, I believe we were in the bottom 10 in three-point percentage. But I know after the All-Star break, when Quinn took over, we jumped up and we shot around like 36%, 37% from three, which would have been around top 10 in the league. And I think with moving John Collins and opening up more space in the floor and then more AJ Griffin minutes, I definitely think the spacing around Trae and DeJounte will improve, which will help the roster a lot. And then even Okongwu, he's shown the willingness to try and expand a little bit more and kind of grow his jump shot. I'm not expecting it to be anything big, but it could help. So,
yeah.
There's something about the willingness to shoot the corner three from a not good shooter that can it just opens up the offense. Like even if you're not a great shooter, being willing to shoot. And also he's athletic with the ball. Like he's super athletic. So if he can rein in the ball handling a little bit and show some chops to be able to, if he catches it in the corner, be willing to shoot as well as drive, that can open up the offense a lot as well.
Yeah, and there's a difference between being a good shooter and then being a player who's willing to shoot if you get the ball. Yeah. Because sometimes you just need someone who maybe like a player who doesn't even shoot above 30% from three. Let's say you've got like a pretty bad shooter, someone who the defense can't just completely pretend like they don't exist. I think can help a lot of times with offensive spacing and then just giving teams as a different look. Because like you've got to see some resemblance of a shot that goes down every once in a while, or else you can't really leverage that positioning. But I think we could see it. I'm pretty high on the Hawks, I'd say. I think what we saw from them after Quinn Snyder got there was really, really good, especially in that Boston series. I, all things considered, did not expect them to give Boston the fight that they did.
No.
I thought Trae Young, he really impressed me in that series. And DeJounte Murray, even though he did get suspended for that one game, which is kind of stupid, I thought he was pretty good. Overall, Quinn Snyder, I think, had that team in really, really good shape offensively, and we'll see about the defense. That's kind of why I think Jalen Johnson could get the starting spot, just to kind of shore up some of that defense next to Capella and next to other guys in the court that aren't really known for being good defenders. But the Quinn Snyder Hawks, I think that's there to stay. A lot of what we saw from last year.
No, I can agree with that for sure. Before we get into our seeding predictions, I wanted to ask Cam, like, because we see, we were talking about it earlier, that some of the teams don't necessarily need these top young talent. And Atlanta is one of these teams. AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, who we've talked about a bunch, and Onyeka Okongwu. These are a lot of, like, in my opinion, glue guys that are, I think all three of them have a good chance to develop into really, really good glue guys. And my thing is just like watching them all their games, like of the three, which of the three you think is going to stick, and like, do you think they have the potential to really put together the holes at the forward position for you guys?
Honestly, I'm very confident in our young talent. I think they just need the reps, which Snyder is definitely more willing to give than Nate was, just going off of what I've seen. Okongwu, I think, is our center of the future. There's been talks about Capella getting traded, which one of the few things keeping that back for the past couple of years is just his relationship with Trey and the other locker room guys. But I know we were in talks with the Mavericks about trading Capella to them. The only thing that stopped that was we wanted Josh Green and or Jaden Hardy in their pick, and that didn't happen. If that Siakam trade ever happens, Capella is definitely gone, and I think we'll see.
Oh yeah.
But I think we're in that situation that Miami was with Hassan Whiteside and Bam. It's just kind of like a matter of time thing. It just kind of sucks that Capella is such a good like player for Trey and DeJounte.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that actually, about the Siakam thing, because there was some noise about a potential Siakam to Atlanta trade. Maybe not being in the works, but maybe being.
They definitely called about
it. There were conversations that happened between the two teams. So like, what would your opinion just like generally be on Pascal Siakam, and do you think like what pieces would you? What pieces are deal breakers for you as far as like if they're involved in that trade for Siakam? I don't want to see it happen.
Okay. First off, I really like Siakam. I think he tends to get overlooked by a lot of players just because the Raptors are not the most exciting team. You don't see a lot of Siakam highlights, but I do think he's a very impactful player and would mesh well with Trey and DeJounte as far as, especially defensively. The only question is spacing. And so if we were to make a move for him, I don't really care about moving picks. I think picks are kind of overrated in today's NBA.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I would be okay with moving Jalen only because it's the same position and him and Pascal do the same things. And obviously, if we made the trade, that would imply that Pascal is willing to sign an extension. I wouldn't want to move Okongwu. I would rather just move Capella because I think Okongwu fits so perfectly for the modern day NBA 5, especially next to Siakam, who is a bigger, lankier defensive four. I think they would mesh perfectly together. And we need as much spacing as possible if Siakam's on the team. AJ, I'm iffy on because I'm honestly high on AJ. I think he has the upside to develop into like, it's kind of an easy comparison nowadays, but like a Jaylen Brown type player. Not saying that he will, but I think he has the ability to. He might not even reach that on our team, but just because his skill set is so malleable as a movement shooter, and then he is athletic as well and has shown a lot of shot creating prowess. I would like to keep him, but I would understand if it meant giving him up. DeAndre Hunter could go. Even though I do, if as long as he's on the team, I want him to be successful, and I really want to see him that people always talk about every year. But at this point, I mean, he's like 25. He's injury prone. He could go. Sadiq, if it meant we got to keep AJ, he can go. But if AJ had to go, Sadiq kind of gives similar qualities as far as a player. Yeah. So I think that would help lessen the hurt. And then Kobe Buffkin, I haven't seen enough of him to really have an opinion as far as like him being involved in a trade. But to go back to the young guys that I hope would stick, I think he does have a Jalen and AJ have a great chance of sticking, especially Jalen just because of his positional versatility and his skill set. If you look at his playmaking numbers, they were through the roof, especially for his position. Like he offers a lot on that end that I think could be really used well.
For sure.
And AJ, his spot really just depends on what we do with Hunter and Bay because they're kind of holding up those minutes.
Yeah.
So if we do end up moving from Hunter, I think AJ has definitely got that spot solidified. And Kobe is just, I like him because he can play on ball and off ball. He's a great catch and shooter, and he has defensive tenacity. Even if he won't be a good defender out the gate, I think he will develop into one. So I can see him being our backup guard for a while until like maybe it's time to pay him because our owner is very cheap. But I could see him sticking as far as our backup guard.
I think the Hawks are in a really good position if they do want to make a trade because they have 3 wings in AJ Griffin, Sadiq Bey, and DeAndre Hunter who are all like can do similar things. And like they're pretty much tiered. Like DeAndre Hunter's the oldest, Sadiq is the second oldest, and AJ Griffin's the youngest. So like you have 3 guys in similar, with Sadiq being 24, DeAndre being 26. It's like you have those 2 guys are in the same age range and they do similar things. So if you lose one of them, you have someone to fill that role right away. So I think that's what's really good about where the Hawks are at. If they want to take another all-in move to acquire another all-star level forward, like in Pascal, because they have guys who can replace the positions that they trade away. So, but yeah,
I will say with that, Sadiq Bey is the only one of those names that is on an expiring contract. He's entering restricted free agency this year.
Yeah, for sure. DeAndre Hunter is very expensive for what he gives you, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think DeAndre Hunter would probably have to be involved just for salary reasons.
Yeah, he'd definitely be gone. I think the trade probably looks like probably like 3 picks. I think we have Sacramento's pick. It might be next year's draft. We do have 1 or 2 more years that we can 1 or 2 more picks we can use that we didn't give up in the DeJounte trade. And I think we might have one of OKC's trade picks. Mm-hmm. So those, and then probably Hunter. It would probably have to be a 3-team with the Mavs. I think that's been the one that's been drawn up the most. So Capella would go to the Mavs. I'm not sure what we would get back. And then if we need to send out more money, I think probably I think the money would probably come from the Mavericks to make up for that. And then we'll probably send out one of AJ or Jalen. Preferably Jalen just because him and Pascal kind of clash skill set wise. Yeah, maybe both. I would hope not both. If it's both, then I'm very iffy on the trade. But
okay.
I think Clint and DeAndre Hunter salary wise would pretty much make up because Pascal Siakam's making $37 million this year.
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
So that would be perfect.
Clint is 18, I believe, and Hunter is 20. So yeah.
There you go.
And then just one of the young guys, but Toronto is probably going to ask for 2 of the young guys. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Toronto's stingy. They'll ask for everything, man.
Yeah, Masai Ujiri is not fun to work with, I hear. So.
You missed out on Shade Sharp, Josh Hart, and a pick.
Yeah, I know in the whatchamacallit, in the earlier trade talks, they rejected every time. And I think in one of the counter offers, they wanted Okongwu, and we said no.
Yeah, no.
I think
I'm super high on Okongwu.
Yeah, I am too. I think he can be really great. If you look at his numbers as well, and even just eye test wise, like he's a very good rim protector. I know Jeff knows because every time we play the Bucks, he shuts down Giannis for whatever reason.
It's one
of the best Giannis guys in the league.
Onyeka literally is the best Giannis defender in the NBA. I swear to God, Jabari Smith Jr. last year and Bam just absolutely worked us. I don't know.
I was shocked seeing Jabari Smith Jr. last year full court press Giannis. I've never seen that.
Dude, that game. That game was at the end of a really big losing streak. We were in a really bad time in December. Injuries were piling up, and that game was at the end of it. And I was like, this season is just done. And then we won 17 games in a row after that. So, but yeah, I think Onyeka. I don't think you would want to move him. I think you would rather definitely keep him because he can fill. I don't think he's as great of a rebounder as Clint, but he can fill almost every role that Clint Capella is offering you on the court. And Pascal's a good rebounder as well. So when you're adding that, you kind of have to think of the Hawk could be one of those teams where it's they have their 2 front court guys in Pascal and Onyeka. If that were to happen, both those guys are averaging like 7 to 8 rebounds each, like that's good,
Yeah, the only question at that point is the shooting, but you would have that anyways if you gave up on Onyeka. So
yeah, for sure.
I think Onyeka is going to be like special on the defensive end. I think he already is, and I think once he actually gets that starting role, I think he'll even be better.
I can't wait.
I can't wait. I'm super high on him on the defensive end. I think everyone is, but I think he can unlock a lot of things for the Hawks. They just got to invest in him.
And he fits Trey and DeJounte's play styles perfectly. He's super versatile on both ends of the floor. I think he's definitely one of the untouchable pieces.
Yeah. And also with Onyeka, he's way faster and like laterally than Clint. So he would fit that offense even better because they would be able to open up so much in the transition game, pushing the ball down the court really early. So, yeah. For the seating wise, pretty sure we pretty much covered every single player in detail on this roster. So for seating wise, I'm pretty high on them. I think this team could finish anywhere from the fourth to the 7th seed. I think that speaks more to the depth of the conference than the Hawks themselves. But I definitely see them. I think this team struggled a lot last year. They had so many problems getting consistent offensive play going. And it was Trae Young's like worst efficiency year of his career. I don't see that happening again. So I think this team could definitely improve to be a little bit better. They finished 41-41 last year exactly. So I think I could definitely see a 5 to 6 win improvement this year. And probably in the 5 or 6 seed is probably where I would land them.
I've got them at a similar range. I think they could finish anywhere from maybe even 4th to probably like 7th or 8th. But I predict them to be at 6. I think they'll be better than the Knicks. I think they'll be better than like the Nets and the Pacers and everybody around them. And depending on what happens with James Harden and Philly, which they're about to like collapse at any second, it feels like. I think the Hawks could be better than the Sixers. Maybe even the Cavs. I just, we'll see. I feel like I'm pretty high on them as well, Jeff.
Yeah.
For me, I think they're actually one of the more polarizing teams. I think they can finish anywhere from 3 to 8 because, like we said, Philly, we don't know that can implode at any time. It's in the middle of it, and also Miami. I haven't liked the offseason moves Miami has made. And if the Damian Lillard move doesn't happen early, say it happens trade deadline, or even it doesn't happen this year, I don't know. Like, we'll get into it, but I don't know if they can tread water. Like, I'm not so hot. I don't have faith in them. So then it's really like Cleveland, New York, Brooklyn, Miami. I think Atlanta can finish over all of them in the seeding. I think they can be a really good team. If I had to predict, though, I'd say 4 or 5.
Y'all making me happy, bro. I tell other folks I think we finished in like 4th seed, and it's, you're biased. You're an Atlanta fan. But I genuinely think we could finish anywhere between like 3 and 8. I think we're going to be a lot more consistent this year because I don't know if y'all know, but there's a stat like we couldn't win or lose more than like 2 games in a row last year.
Yeah. I remember that you guys were like 500 for like 2.5 months straight.
Right. We finished 500. We were 500 in like every aspect. Yeah, like it was bad. But I genuinely like the only teams I think are definitively better than us. I like as far as the regular season goes are the Bucks, the Celtics, and I'll probably say the Cavs. The Heat, again, it just depends on the Dame stuff. But like you said, we'll get to that. And then of course Philly with the James Harden stuff. There's no telling. So I think we could finish as high as 3. I got us just to be a little bit realistic, like 4th or 5th. It really does depend on the Philly situation. If they get robbed, then 4th, but if not, then probably 5th. And then, of course, Heat with Dame situation. But when it comes to the New York teams, Indy, Orlando, Toronto, Chicago, like I'm confident that we'll finish higher than them.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think the East it's just changing so much this offseason. The landscape of it's gonna be a lot different. And even looking at the 5 through 8 seed this year, it was a 6-game difference between Atlanta and New York, and like Jeff said, a 6-game increase is not shocking for Atlanta at all. I could see them increasing more than 6 wins.
Yeah,
and that puts them right at that 4 seed.
Yeah, I think they could be close to a 50-win team.
I could see us getting 50 wins this year. We got 40 last year, so 9-game win. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason that people are so like low on the Hawks is because the conversation around Trae Young has just gotten so weird that
it's a nasty dialogue, man.
Bad, bro.
He's the best point guard in the East, by the way. Clear cut, no questions asked, bro.
It's actually insane.
I love Tyrese Halliburton. Like he's one of I ain't gonna say one of my favorite players, but he's one of my favorite personalities in the league.
Yeah.
I really like the Indiana Pacers team as a whole. I have no reason to hate Tyrese Halliburton. But when it comes to any conversations with Halliburton and Trae, it's a clear answer, and it's not the motherfucking Indiana.
Yeah, no, it's not an argument right now. Trae's leaps and bounds better. Trae's one of those players where I don't even know how it happened in the media, but people
it's because of the New York stuff, man.
But that was dope. Why don't people like
because of the Heat? Because of the Heat series. It's because
that was a bad series.
Oh,
that's honestly, you got.
That's when it all started. It's like the Heat figured out Trae Young for one series, and then after that, everybody labeled Trae as a playoff dropper, even though the year before that he led his team to the Eastern Conference Finals. But yeah, that Heat series did like irreparable damages to the Trae Young brand, in that it's gotten so bad around him. Like I don't want to call people out, but like Through the Wire did their top 10 point guards list, and motherfuckers were having him off the list. Like I was like,
I didn't watch that.
I'm dead serious. It was like, what am I watching? It's like,
and I love Through the Wire, and I even know like Pierre is a huge, or not a huge Trae fan, but he messes with Trae, so it was really surprising to see like they.
We all love Through the Wire too, and I just thought, it was weird.
I just think it's people fall. I even did it when we were making our centers list. When making the list, I fell into the Sabonis can't defend mindset, and then like re-look at this, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Who cares if Trae Young can't defend? He's so good offensively that it shouldn't matter. And it's like I think people are just so focused on his deficiencies that they don't notice he's top 3 offensive engine in the league.
I'm gonna be honest. I was dying laughing when I got that message from you, Matthias. You just go, I was looking at my list again. How did I have Sabonis at like 8? I was like,
I started watching the film and I was like, what am I doing? I played on the cover, man. I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
I think one thing with Trae too is he's always kind of had that weird perception around him in the media as far as being like overrated. Like of course y'all probably seen the clip where he's getting overrated in Chance High School. But even at Oklahoma, there was a lot of questions on whether his play style would translate. A lot of Jimmer Fredette comparisons. Obviously, he sucked in summer league. That didn't help. And since then, it's kind of just been like up and down, whether or not he's been like the underdog or villain. So it's kind of just, and like you said, the Miami Heat series is really what killed it because his numbers were terrible. And then, of course, in hindsight, when you look at the 2021 run, his efficiency on paper didn't look good at all. And he had the game 2 against the Bucks somehow makes people forget about the game 1 against the Bucks. So it's kind of just like
if Giannis and Trae didn't get hurt at the same time, there's a good chance that the Hawks make the finals that year.
I'm glad you said
I agree.
I didn't say
if Trae didn't get hurt for those 2 games when Giannis was also out, the reason we beat them those games that Giannis was out and those because Trae came back before Giannis. Giannis missed the rest of the series, but Trae being hurt led and Giannis being out, like the Hawks, that I think there was a 1 or 2 game overlap where they were both out. Like the Hawks looked completely lost on offense during those games.
Yeah,
we did. I think we won the game that he was out.
Yeah,
but when he came back, his ankle was like bad. And
so he was literally spotted. He was literally sitting in the corner. Like you couldn't.
It was weird.
Yeah. So, it could have been bad, but yeah. So then we could get into the last team, which is the Miami Heat. One of the most polarizing teams of the offseason for obvious reasons. We've banned Dame talk, trade talk rumors on the podcast until it actually happens because there's nothing coming out of it. So this is going to be with the assumption of who is on the roster right now. I want everyone to hear that before we start talking about them. Damian Lillard is not on this roster yet, so I'm not going to assume he's going to be on the roster. He most likely will be if a trade goes through, but he's not yet. So can't evaluate the team with Damian Lillard on it. So, yeah. For then you can get into the rotation if you want to do that, Ryan, really quick.
Yeah. So this roster is looking a little bit bare bones compared to even last year's like finals team, which was already a bit thin. So they've got Kyle Lowry, point guard, Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, also kind of filling in some of that guard depth. Forwards, Caleb Martin, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, Haywood Highsmith, Nikola Jovic, Jaime Jaquez Jr. And then the bigs, they've got Bam Adebayo and Thomas Bryant. I think their starting lineup's going to look something like Kyle Lowry starting at 1, just because they have no other option. Tyler Hero at the 2, Caleb Martin, I think, is going to start. Jimmy Butler at the 4, and then Bam at the 5.
Yeah, I would think there'd be something similar, unless they want to do Kyle Lowry off the bench, which they did have success doing last season, and run a lineup of Tyler Hero, Josh Richardson, and then Jimmy, or I have no idea.
Yeah, it would be Jimmy and Caleb.
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 And then Bam at the 5, which could be really gross because Caleb was not good at the 4 last year when they had to run him extensive minutes there. So I don't know. Yeah, this roster right now is not great. Like there is a clear lack of offensive firepower right now, and this is the hardest team to really evaluate going into the season.
Yeah. I think looking at it though, they still the Hero, Butler, Bam core, and even a little bit like you could even add Robinson and Martin in there. They have so much continuity with this Spo-led team that it's hard to necessarily bet against them. Like we already saw it in this playoff run. Yeah. But they've also shown as a regular season team to not necessarily care, especially Jimmy. So I don't know if this is a season where they can do that. And I'm not feeling confident on this team. I don't see a consistent offense. They were bad last year in the regular season.
Yeah.
25th in offensive rating, 26th in field goal percentage. They don't have any like big depth. Like I don't have faith in Thomas Bryant. It's Bam versus the world down there.
Yeah, they're it's really because their starting lineup, when you look at it, isn't terrible. Like they lack size, but I do think that adding Josh Richardson helps a lot, and I do think that's an underrated pickup because for one, people forget that he was with the Heat for the first, I think, 4 years of his career. So he knows the culture, he knows the system. And he's also very versatile because, I mean, while he was there, he came in as a guard. Like, so he has some playmaking chops. Of course, he's never going to be a lead playmaker, but he can help on that end. And when he's going, like, he's a decent scoring option, too. Like, he can definitely pop off for a cool 20. But when you get to that bench, I think their next point guard is Jamari Bouye on a two-way. And I love Jamari Bouye, but it's not going to cut it. No. And then you just have, like, Love, who's getting older and regressing fast. Dedmon, I don't even need to mention him, really. And then Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic, who haven't shown anything. Even though I like, especially Jovic, I think he could be a very intriguing player for them. But, like, it's not.
They're young. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a year or two away from – they might show us that, like, hey, in a year or two, we can be in this roster. But right now, they're not.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly,
I'd be shocked if they're –
I could see Jaquez being an immediate contributor just because he was a 4-year guy in college.
Yeah.
And he's weird because, like, his skill set it shouldn't work, but it kind of does. Yeah. Like, he almost seems like an outdated player because he works a lot in, like, the high post and the mid-range. Yeah. But, like, it kind of does. And he fits the Heat perfectly. But Jovic is more, even though I think he has a higher ceiling, he's, like, his skill set isn't something the Heat have really had recently. So it's kind of hard.
Yeah, we'll see. It's hard to put a rookie into the Heat system and immediately expect results, but also we've also seen them do it plenty of times with just like 1-2 year guys at the same time.
Yeah.
You just have to see once. It's so weird that it's a thing, but the heat system makes or break guys, and I think Homie can be good, but I don't want to bet on a rookie.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on him either. But I think him being a 4-year guy in college does help.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I think if they do make the Dame trade and somehow they keep one of Jovic or Hawkes, which I'm going to be honest, there's actually a chance. Like there is, they keep one of them. Like I bet if they, okay, I don't think they keep Jovic at all, but I bet there's a chance Hawkes stays.
The problem is that, they're not. I don't think there's a really that high of a chance that they keep Jovic, because the only thing that the Trailblazers need right now is a big. So why would they not trade for a big?
Yeah. I think, but Hawkes for sure, I think has a chance of staying on the roster, and with another scorer, I think his play style fits a lot more. I'm just looking at this roster, and the scoring is so.
Yeah, that's the biggest question mark for sure. Like this roster is weird because they lack a lot of offensive firepower, and they don't have like the prolific scorer, like the legit superstar go-to guy that a lot of these other teams in the East have, at least in the playoffs, because Jimmy, or at least in the regular season, because Jimmy turns into a different player in the playoffs. But I actually think this team is going to be better than they were last year, even though the roster, it feels a little bit gutted. I think, losing Max Strus and Gabe Vincent are big losses because those players played a lot of minutes for them last year and the year before that. But I think there's a lot to be looking forward to. Caleb Martin showed a lot in these last playoffs. Duncan Robinson kind of had a bit of a career resurgence after having like a year of basically not playing. Tyler Hero is going to be back from his injury that kept him out of the playoffs. And overall, the momentum that they are coming off from that finals run, I think can actually push this team pretty far this regular season. I think riding off that great run, I think a lot of that is going to carry over for next season. And they haven't made the Dame trade, so we can't evaluate the team under any sort of real assumption that a Dame trade is going to be made. Just because, like, from all accounts, there has been zero communication between Pat Riley and Joe Cronin for about a month now.
Matthias is just like,
I feel bad for you, bro.
Dude, we're gonna roll out a lineup with Anthony Simons as small forward game one, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. Dude.
So we just have no. There has been zero smoke about any Dame updates to Miami, so we have to just assume that by the start of the season and even by the trade deadline that it's just not coming. But I still think this Heat roster can be better than they were, and I think some of those teams in like the middle of the East might be a little bit worse, or maybe not worse, but might wane out a little bit. Like I don't think the Sixers are going to be as good as they were last year. I think that's a team that the Heat could probably jump. The Hawks, I think we all kind of like, but Brooklyn's not going to be 6 again. They're going to fall way down. I think Miami Heat can easily take their spot. So for a range for the Heat, I think they could be as high as 3rd if all the dominoes kind of fall.
Without Dame, okay.
And if everything falls into place. And then for the low ends, I could just be like completely wrong, and they might just end up being like 7th or 8th again. So if I had to choose one spot, I'd probably say like 5th or 6th for the Heat, but they're a super tough team to evaluate.
Yeah, I think for me too, like honestly, like when I was looking at it, I was like, if they got Dame and they kept some of the pieces that work well, I could see this team finishing like they could be like the 1st seed, but also they could be like this if they just stay how they are and they still have the injury issues, because there's a lot of older players on this team that have had injury issues. Like Kyle Lowry's like he's 37, like he's not going to be healthy the entire season. Even like Jimmy's had injury issues before, like in the regular season, especially with him not taking the regular season super serious the last few, like he definitely will sit out games if he's injured. Like he's not going to play through those a lot of the times unless they really need him to, which especially early in the season, he tends to rest those games.
Kevin Love too.
And also like a big part of their big run to go to the finals was like a crazy 3-point shooting run. I mean, they were shooting like 50% from 3 in multiple series. Like, I don't think that offense is going to translate at all.
Yeah.
And Duncan Robinson was almost unplayable all regular season last year. And then the playoffs, he just became like a great shooter again. And he was like getting to the rim at will. Like it was like the weirdest transition ever from regular season to playoffs. So I don't know. I think there's definitely just a world where a lot of these guys, the offense is really, really rough, but the defense is really good, as it usually is. And I think at this point with the Heat, we kind of know what we're getting in the regular season. That's why it's so hard to evaluate them, because they aren't rolling out 100% trying all the time. But I think this is a year with how deep the East is. I think there's some teams that could sneak up on them if they're not really taking it serious the whole year. So for me, same thing. I think if this roster is how it is right now, I'd probably have them finishing about the 4th or 5th seed, probably. I think they'll be better than they were last year, just because they had like a month and a half where like literally every player on the roster was hurt. So I think they'll definitely finish better than last year. So I'd probably say like my pick for them would probably be the 5th seed, 4th or 5th seed.
Yeah. Honestly, I think even though we do know that Jimmy and Co kind of tend to take the regular season a little bit more lackadaisically, people forget that 2 years ago they were one of the higher seeds.
Yeah, they were the 1 seed.
Period of time, they were the 1 seed. Yeah, or did they finish as a 1 seed?
Yeah, in 2022 they were the 1 seed.
Okay, yeah. So like
that's why Boston and Milwaukee matched up in the second round. It's because they were the 2 and 3 seeds.
That's right. Yeah. And I could definitely I don't think it happens again, but just because they've shown the capacity to be willing to compete, and they're a very streaky team, but that streakiness can work in their favor if they go on, if they get really comfortable and get momentum. So I think, like Ryan said, if all the dominoes fall into place, I could see them getting the 3 seed, but I could also see them falling as low as the 8 seed. Although I don't think they'll be as bad as they were last year. It really just depends on health because their roster is old. But I think, 4 or 5. I think I had the Hawks 4 or 5 too. So whichever one they don't grab, the Heat will.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little lower on the Heat roster without Dame. Barring a Dame trade, no Dame, I think they're a 5 to 8 or 9 seed. I get the injury concern from last year that I know they missed a lot of time where their whole core was hurt. But I think the fact that on paper this roster is a lot worse, and what made their offense run was their continuity, like you said, Jeff.
Yeah.
And they lost almost all of that. And so it's the identity of the team is going to be very, very different, and they're going to have to deal with the potential of am I getting traded, blah, blah, blah. I think the first part of the year is going to be tough on the Heat. Yeah. But like you said, I think if Dame gets traded there, their biggest hole is filled with a top 5 offensive engine.
Yeah.
Then you have Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler next to him, and it's okay, they can be a 1 seed. So
yeah.
If I were to bet, I put them at 6. I wouldn't say them miss the playoffs, but they'll be a borderline play-in team for sure.
Yeah.
On the upper side.
Yeah, for sure. All right then. Well, I think that concludes the division. That's all the teams. I think we can wrap up here then. Appreciate you coming on today, Cam, to go through this with us. Welcome back anytime. Let everybody know what you're about, plug all your socials and all that kind of stuff.
Plug time. So basically I do photography and videography. That's my main thing, film and all that. And like Jeff said, I think I'm from Atlanta, so this is any Atlanta sports, I'm all about that. I write for the Drop Step blog, if you go to my Twitter, which is @KillerCam_, but the L's are ones, you can read all of my work there. The link is in the description of that, or the bio. Ryan's content is there too. So, we both have contributor pages if you want to go read all of our content. And then my Instagram is CamVision, which is CAMVZN, and that's where most of my other content is as far as like film and all that stuff. So,
yeah. For sure. Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, which we can give it a little bit of talk here. All 4 of us are parts of the Who Has Hoops community on Twitter. It's a great group of basketball minds to talk about. A lot of creators in there. So if you're a viewer that's not from there, and you're active on Twitter, go in there. It's a great family of people that love to talk hoops, music, all that kind of stuff. And we're super active on there. So you can go check that out as well. And like always, appreciate everyone for watching in today. Give us a like, sub, drop comments on your record positions for this division, or some of the highlights of some of these teams down below. So appreciate it. You guys have a great one. Peace out.
Peace.